All right. Hello, everybody. File in. Welcome to our Ambition webinar. We've got 5 ways the industry's most forward-thinking revenue leaders are preparing for 2023. We will give the folks a little time to hop in here before we officially get started, but we are really glad you are with us today. Panel just talked about some really important stuff ahead of this. Dogs, 1 monitor versus 2. Can you actually share your screen without sharing the notes in your presentation? A lot of really important topics that I'm sure you're here to find out what's next. But we will get started here in just a second. So we'll give a little pause. All right. And so while people are coming in, let's do a few housekeeping things. Please remember to put yourself on mute. Questions, put them in the chat. We have a team monitoring those questions, so we'll make sure to get to as many of those as possible. You can use the Q&A box there, pretty simple, but please interact. We want your questions. That's what makes these fun. And of course, we will send you the recording. Will we get the recording question? You don't have to send that. You're going to get the recording as long as you signed up. That will be sent out here in the next 24 hours. So I see people still coming in, but I think we will go ahead and reward the folks that were on time. So I am Mark McWaters. I lead the enterprise team here at Ambition. But I am going to introduce, and we'll let them introduce themselves, the more important stars of the show here of who will be on our panel today. So Will, kick it off.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Will Reyes, SDR manager at Crunchbase. Been here for about 3 years now. Started as an SDR, worked my way up, and excited to have this team continue to grow, especially as we dive into more and more outbound going forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Will. We'll just move across the screen here. Sawyer, you're next.
Yep, absolutely. So good to be here. Name is Sawyer Ritz. I'm director of sales over at CompanyCam, which is a photo documentation software used by contractors. And been with CompanyCam for almost a year now, but started in the digital marketing space previously with a company called Constant Contact, which was then Endurance, and then which was then Newfold. So super excited to be here and learn from everyone else.
Thank you. Michael.
Awesome. Mark, thank you. My name is Michael Plunka. I'm actually our Senior Regional Sales Director here at Paycor, covering our bank channel. I cover our business banking relationships brand-wide, along with part of our retail. Been with Paycor for about 4 years or so, and I suppose I've carried almost every role within this channel, so I'll be excited to speak a little bit more here later on. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. And last but not least, Sarah.
Hey, y'all. Nice to see everybody. My name is Sarah Linich. I am a manager at Zoom for our small to medium-sized business teams. And much like Will, I kind of started off as an individual contributor and have moved into a management role. I will be at Zoom 4 years in December, which in Zoom years is about 45. And I have the gray hairs to show it in that respect, but super, super excited about today. I know we've got a lot to share, and this is a rockstar panel. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. You are right. What I love about this group is we've got SDR leadership, we've got sales leadership, we've got second line leadership, we've got leading SMB, we've got leading mid-market, leading enterprise. So there really is a breadth of different skill sets on this, and I'm really excited about having the crew together. So little real talk first. 2022 hasn't been the easiest of years. You all have seen the news, what seems like daily now. There's some kind of restructure or downsize or freeze in hiring or freeze in spend. And obviously the stock market has done some crazy things this year that I think has caused a lot of concern, a lot of hesitation, and really 2022 has caused the planning for 2023 to change up quite a bit, which we're going to talk a little bit about here in just a minute. But what we've seen is that 72% of these revenue leaders say they're struggling to hit their goals. And really what I feel and hear in that is that we're all being asked to do more with less, or do the same with less. A lot of statistics we see right now. I saw one on LinkedIn the other day where Sahil over at Bravado talked about 63% of his community, which is thousands of sellers, missed quota in Q3. So we are being asked as leaders to do a similar amount of output, well, probably with less on our team. And that is causing us to focus on how do we get more from the existing group that we have. Mari, hit the next slide here. So Forrester, while Ambition, of course, has a lot of opinions that our customers share with us, this is a third party. So this is Forrester. If you're not familiar with Forrester, they're an expert on trends and where things are heading. And here in this visual, what really jumped out to me is that the sales investment coming in 2023 is behind product marketing CX. So us as sales leaders, sometimes we get spoiled. We're kind of used to getting what we want. We're like closest to the dollars. Well, here, as the Forrester points out here in the next 12 months, that B2B sales investment is actually going to be behind product marketing and CX. So what are we going to do about that, right? If we're not going to be at the top of getting the new investment or the additional headcount, then we have to focus on, again, more from the existing group or smaller group that we do have. And what Forrester found was that what would be invested in the talent and productivity segment was around coaching programs and, believe it or not, sales productivity tools. How can we get those additional opportunities? How can we create additional sales? How can we spend more time with our people to develop them to get more out of that individual? And so Forrester pointing this out is just massive validation of what a lot of us are hearing in the market. And when it comes to preparing for 2023, of course, makes us think about that a little bit differently. So 2023, how do we shift towards success in the new year? We can restate how challenging 2022 is, but I think we all agree that you have to have that like snap and clear mindset to think about what's next and what are we going to do about it. If there's one thing I love about sales leaders, it's they're not afraid to take on a challenge. And when we enter into 2023, I think there's a great opportunity for a lot of us to develop our teams and really force to take our teams to a different level. And so what I'm excited about having this crew together today is you've got sales leaders who are focused on this exact thing. How do we make 2023 better than ever and create this bold 2023 we talk about in the headline? So with that, let's start getting into our first thing we're going to talk about in terms of making this bold 2023. So here we've got hold your leaders accountable with measured coaching programs. So I don't think anyone disagrees that coaching is a great answer to getting more from the existing team. People want to be developed. I saw something recently that the number one reason people were leaving in sales was because of development. Usually you hear boss, which I'm sure was a close second, but development being number one. So Sarah Linich over at Zoom is going to kick this one off for us. Sarah, tell us a little bit of how you think about this coaching, this leader accountability.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this point. I think it's super important. Something that a great leader told me once, which I don't have any original thoughts, I just borrow from others. But the one-on-ones as a frontline manager are the job, period, right? Everything else we do around that is absolutely supplemental and it's great. And we all want to do more, but the one-on-ones are the job. And I think a lot of times too, what happens, especially in a remote environment, is there's not as much insight from an executive level about, are these coaching moments happening? Are these things happening? And so anybody that talks to me for more than probably 5 minutes knows that I love tools. I love tools because we have way too many things to do, and keeping things efficient and effective is super important. So allowing to have a tool in place, whether it's Ambition or something else, to where you have a very set amount of things that you address. So executive leadership says, okay, what are you looking at on a weekly basis? And you're like, oh, hey, here I have it right here. This is amazing. But then you have an opportunity to really dig in with your reps or anybody else to start using it as a diagnostic tool. I have a story that I love to tell. And if my rep is on the webinar, I'm going to probably get added at this, but I love implementing new processes and procedures. I love having the insight for coaching programs, but I had a rep that was very much resisting. I don't want to do the pre-work. I don't want to have these questions. I really don't. It's a very tenured rep. It does amazing work for me. We got into our one-on-one. We were done in 20 minutes. And I said, how did that feel? What did this look like? Did we address everything you were looking for? And he goes, yeah, this is pretty great. And I feel like I got all my questions answered and we have a lot of things to diagnose with. And so to get that kind of on board, I think also is really important when you start to have these measured coaching programs, because those are the aha moments that maybe, yes, there is data involved, but it's also getting the rep to be on board with that.
So true. I mean, being prepared ahead of time and letting the rep lead the conversation allows them to feel more heard, and you as a leader better understand what they are going through, and therefore you can adjust and help coach. It's interesting, you hear like the rep pushback. I often hear a negative connotation that leaders don't coach enough. And my pushback on that is, well, leaders want to coach. They're just so busy. There's so many different priorities that they struggle to coach well because they don't feel they have the time. So, Sawyer, I'd love to hear your take on all that's being juggled, how to keep things simple. What do you think here?
Yeah, absolutely. And echoing all the points that Sarah definitely mentioned is, and what you also said is, there's 20 different things that managers are responsible for in the sales world today. It's, hey, I got to understand data. I have to coach my people. I have to have crucial conversation with my employees. And then I have to answer to my manager, whoever, if things aren't going, the way that they need to be going. And I need to be able to dive into that quickly. And so you need to make sure that you have a simple system that is going to be making your coaching effective. So what's the one thing that you can focus on as a manager, and how can you drive that metric? And having that program in place to where this is what I'm focusing on, and I can directly see if the coaching that I'm doing is impacting it, and being able to validate it with the rep and the manager to say, hey, we are making progress and here's the proof of that. Having that type of program in place is what's going to make your organization scale a lot easier. And so I know that Mark, maybe you asked me yesterday, like what's some go-to questions, and we talked about, the win model. And so we try to focus on one thing. And so what is that one thing that's impacting your call on a positive note or a developmental note? And then what's the impact of that? And what are our next steps in order to keep that going? Or what do we need to do to change it and make it a little bit different? Because the numbers are one thing, but reps need to know like what is happening in their conversations. Like, what are you doing that's actually impacting and influencing these results? And if you don't have a measured coaching program that's going to tell you that, it's going to make it very hard to see if your playbooks are actually working the way that they're designed to. So that's just kind of my thoughts on echoing some of Sarah's points.
I love that. I mean, measuring the coaching program is often a miss. People show up and they're just like, hey, what do you want to talk about today? And then that feels easy, but that keeps happening. Development doesn't happen. People feel lost. A lot of negative impacts there. Now, you mentioned the win model. You hit on a couple of them. Can you just share again what W, I, and N stand for?
Yeah, absolutely. So the win model is, I mean, if you imagine like kind of two sides of it, on the left side, you have kind of positive feedback. And then on the left side, you have developmental feedback. And what we try to do is we make sure that your positive feedback always leads into your developmental, because your strengths can sometimes cover up the weaknesses most of the time in sales conversations. And so we focus on what's going really well right here in this column. So what's happening in your calls? How is that impacting? How can we keep doing that? And your developmental side might be, hey, you found out all this great information in your discovery because you asked X, Y, and Z, but I didn't hear you use that when you got into your solution presentation. And when you got into your close and there was an objection, you didn't go back to that initial reason. Why is that? How can we do that? So those are kind of the three things is, what's happening on the call? How is that impacting it? And what are our next steps to either do that or slightly tweak it? So then that way the developmental part of your calls flow a lot easier and you don't have those issues later down the road.
I love it. I love a good simple way to approach coaching win model. There's a nugget for the crowd. All right, let's keep rolling. Let's talk about number 2, democratizing access to revenue performance data. One thing we see a lot is a customer will talk about what we've defined as tech bloat. I don't know if we made that up, but it's that there's too much technology and that it's challenging to know where to go when. So we're going to keep moving with Sawyer here, who had a take on really how to approach this challenge heading into next year.
Absolutely. So I think everyone has worked for an organization or maybe currently working for an organization. I've had the luckiness in my career to work for 3 different ones where we all started on spreadsheets, doing manual reporting, being able to have to go to your ops team anytime that you needed trending data. And there's no clean or easy way for you to say, hey, this is moving up or this is moving down without getting someone else to pull the raw data from you, whether it's 5 different billing systems because you work with multiple brands, if you went through acquisitions, whatever that might be. So having a single source of truth to have all of that data feed into one spot and having that data be the only thing that your team focuses on is really what's going to help you scale your organization. So for us, we use Ambition for that. We have, if any of you have used Salesforce, you probably know that some reporting and some objects don't work well together. You can't easily make combined reports, and it's not a very clean and easy way to view. But having that single source of truth and having all that data feed into one spot and just utilizing that is going to give more time back to your managers and be able to focus on the coaching, which is what we talked previously. Because managers, in my experience, and I think I have maybe 1 manager or 2 managers on this call, you don't want to be data analysts. Like that's the least probably favorite part of your job. You want to be able to coach and develop your people and do the things that we hired you to do. So then that way you can continue to press forward and get your team to, hit 110%, hit 120%, smash the quota for the month, feel good, celebrate the wins. And all of that can't happen unless you have that data democratized.
Keep it simple. Yeah. Asking a frontline manager, especially to be a data analyst, I, for one, would probably be terrible at that. Like get them in the deals, get them in the problems, help them solve, eliminate an obstacle. Ops teams typically can help you more on that data analyst side. So, Michael, I'd love to hear how Paycor thinks about this. Like you obviously lead a team, you got a lot of access to different things. How do you simplify that for your group?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mark. For us, having access, and actually I'll speak to it a little bit on, in my section here today as well, but having access to that raw data, being able to track it from rep to rep, it helps from a team perspective to know where your team is at all points, but it also helps from a coaching perspective to understand where are again, I think we've talked about it a few times today, the one thing. We cannot focus on the large scale view, especially on a day-to-day or week-to-week or month-to-month basis. You have to identify where's the one area that we can make an impact, see the incremental change with that one impact before moving to the next step. So Sawyer mentioned a few great things there in terms of seeing that the change in different organizations move from spreadsheets to more of an automated system with Ambition. It is a world of difference when you're able to focus on the development of that individual. You not only increase the retention of your employees, but then also see the growth in the organization that you're expecting as well. So absolutely.
Thank you. We are hitting on some real great pieces here. So keep it simple, try to get all that data in one place. Sales leaders, we feel you, we live this life. Like there's so many different areas you can go to. There's so many KPIs you can pay attention to. Do your best to boil it down to the real key drivers. And we're going to talk about sales motions here in a minute. We'll give some ideas, but great number 2. All right, let's press on. Number 3, authentically celebrating wins, every win, every time. This is certainly something near and dear to my heart. Once upon a time, I was Ted Lasso, had a mustache, cheered on us hitting some big goals for the quarter. I love a good celebration. And Will, leading sales development teams, knows this maybe as well as anybody, the importance of celebrating not just the big wins, but the small wins too.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. And, especially in a remote environment, Crunchbase is a remote first company, like probably some of others here on the call today. It's really easy when when you're in office together to lean over to someone and say, hey, great job on that call. You did a great job just now. Way to book that meeting to someone. But in the remote environment, it's hard to make sure everyone really properly gets recognized and their wins are celebrated and feels appreciated. So Ambition, not to hype you guys up too much, is something that we use with our team to help reps get recognized for all those milestones. So our Ambition Slack channel, I think, is every SDR's favorite place on the Crunchbase Slack. It's where, hey, someone just exceeded their activity score for the day, or hey, someone's on a hot streak. They just booked 3 different meetings in a row. It's something where the managers can stop and pause and be like, oh, wow, Rob or Nelly or someone like Jerry is just crushing it today, and take a minute, pause, celebrate that win. And I think at times for us as managers, it's really easy to just be focused on reps producing, but if we're not stopping to celebrate them authentically, then they're kind of going to feel disconnected and not seen, especially in a remote environment. And it's also important too to just shout out the reps who are doing all the little things right, not just the overachievers, especially in the SDR role, because it's such a grind. And so I know we're wired as managers to always think, hey, how can we get better? But it's also, hey, just you made some extra dials today. You booked another meeting than you thought, right? Just hats off to you for just putting in the work, because it's a grind out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think about some sports analogies like Joel Embiid for the Sixers, talking about trust the process, or Inky Johnson, who's a motivational speaker, talks about like just falling in love with that process. And so as a sales leader, I think, okay, how do I define the process and how do I celebrate the milestones, not just the outcome? Because if we can get the team falling in love with the process, like, sounds too simple, but results will take care of themselves, right? We have to feel like we're on the right path. Okay, so I'm going to kick it over to Sarah here too, who I know loves a good celebration. Who also, Sarah, I got to expose you because I love this so much. Her hype video before getting on this webinar was Beyonce. So that's another nugget you can take. A good Beyonce jam, get you in the mood to celebrate. Okay, Sarah, tell us about celebrating every time.
I mean, if you guys, we can talk about that for the rest of the webinar, of like everybody's hype songs. Do not discount a good hype song if you're looking to celebrate. Like, music does it in a way, like power posing, that's a whole nother webinar. But something that Will said that I think is really important in this situation is the little things. I think it's super easy to celebrate when things are going well. It's very, very difficult to celebrate when things are hard. And what reps and what people want to do right now is feel seen. I think that's very, very important. So it is, you made a couple extra dials today. Being here, right? And speaking from experience, being here through COVID, we all got very isolated. And so we have to find ways to have those connections, and celebrations is part of it, right? Having that connection, being able to lean on each other, like quick shout out. If you're a Brene Brown fan, I follow the Dare to Lead podcast, and she recently did a podcast with Simon Sinek and Adam Grant talking about what's happening in return to work. And I think celebrations is super key to this, because in there, they talk about the difference between optimism and toxic positivity. And I think that's part of this, right? The optimism piece is saying, okay, things are not where we would like them to be. And as a sales leader, we do that a lot, right? Because we go up and down on that roller coaster. Things are not where I'd like to be, but let's like rally around each other. Let's link up arms and know that we're going to get through this, and we're going to be better off for it. And having those celebrations for the little things. And I also call them, like, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but just having it to where I have Recognition Wednesday, where I always reach out to some person not on my team and give them a thank you. I think that also helps in these situations as well.
Yes, I mean, feeling seen in a remote environment where like my office is in the corner of my bedroom, and that is not that dissimilar to a lot of folks that I know. And it's very easy to be a little lost, like sometimes even hide, right? And you definitely don't want that to happen when these things, these worth celebrating, come up, and just wanting to make people feel seen. Also, Brene Brown fan, fully endorse checking out her vulnerable takes. So okay, celebrate everyone every time going into 2023, huge. Let's talk next about some sales motions. that can be designed to help you when things are moving, things are changing. If you're not changing as a sales leader, as a salesperson, you're probably falling behind. And so we're going to talk about some fluid motions that you can run, and Michael's going to kick us off on this topic.
Absolutely, Mark, appreciate that. Where I'll start today, first and foremost, is, when we're speaking today a little bit about designing these fluid sales motions, I think it's important to note first that I think it's going to differ from person to person. As a leader, you first have to identify what are your strengths as a leader, and really work around emphasizing those and capitalizing on them. It's absolutely critical. The analogy that I guess I'll use today is if you try to put a square block in a round hole, it's just, it's not going to work. So you have to figure out what works well for you. The second thing I'll say is I think it's also important to note that, we've been speaking a lot about today, about how this past year has been tough. And I'll say, Paycor is no exception, to that rule by any stretch of the imagination. But I'm also pleased to say that by implementing some of these best practices that these leaders on this call today have, spoken to, and investing in our people and looking at the developmental side of things, we've been able to achieve, our goals, at 100%. So it's absolutely possible. That being said, the question that kind of poses itself is, well, where do we start? Especially when we're designing these fluid sales motions. Out of an effort to keep it, clear and concise today, I'll try to focus on two main areas. The first is going to be really around, implementing a seamless and standardized process to ultimately know your business. We touched on it a little bit earlier today, but access to both your KPIs as an individual, your team's KPIs, allows for an incredibly strong sense of direction. That direction, I think, in my mind, naturally drives a culture that's fueled with competition, action, follow-up. And honestly, if I knew that ambition would be plugged as many times as it has, I probably wouldn't say this. So I promise it's not a plug. But honestly, ambition is really a way that we've done that, here at Paycor. We are a hybrid model ourselves. So we have people that are in office, we have people that are, remote. But the TVs that ambition allows us to utilize, keeping those KPIs top of mind for both people that are in office and virtual, constantly keeps those revenue driving actions, top of mind, for everyone day to day. So summary of first point, know your business, I suppose is the best way of putting it. My second point, number two, is really ensure that the process you're looking to build is, best way of putting it, fiercely repeatable and familiar. Okay, we obviously all have quotas that we work towards, monthly, and many times we're trying to build that path to achieve. But we all understand there's going to be surprises, there's going to be curveballs that are unexpected, day to day. And so, the way that I look at it is, if a process is repeatable, if the process is, familiar, then that always will allow a baseline for you to evaluate and pivot quickly when necessary. I would say, I guess, an example of this, within our organization can be seen as we've developed a meeting in the mornings called our morning workshops. Building off my first point, I think in sales, we really can make an analogy in terms of it's very similar to running your own business. In order to run a successful business, you have to know your numbers day in and day out. But then the second part of it is, are you ready to speak to it, on a day-to-day basis, or are you evaluating your own process regularly? So as a result of these morning workshops, each seller, again, is expected to walk through the results, share successes, maybe areas for improvement. And again, the analogy that I use in this case, if you teach a man, or if you give a man or woman a fish, they'll eat for a day. If you give a man or woman, if you teach them to fish, they're going to eat for a lifetime. And so that's the idea behind these morning workshops. Again, this expectation allows us to have 30 minutes every day to plan, pivot, engage on a one-on-one basis. So
I love this.
Yeah.
Like knowing your funnel. I was telling a seller who was looking for a job the other day, they're like, what should I ask to try to cut through, like figure out if this is really a good job or not? And I'm like, ask them about their funnel. If they can't give you a clear answer of how something moves to a closed won or closed loss opportunity, that's a miss. Like in 2022 now, as a leader, you may not have it perfect, but I certainly feel the expectation that I should know what my business looks like, the good, bad, and ugly. And if I can't define that funnel then how can I expect someone I bring on board to figure out, where to go next? And my dad has been in sales for 40 years, and he's like, Mark, isn't that micromanagement? I'm like, no, Dad, that's like the expectation now. When people come in, you need to be able to give them the answers to the test. It doesn't mean they can't be flexible, but they want to know what right looks like. And I certainly feel an obligation to give that. So also love this morning stand up. Sawyer, I think your team had a similar approach to workshops. Tell us about how you guys do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have what's called Workshop Wednesdays. I think, Mark, you called it film or like film day on Thursdays. But I think
game film. Yep.
Game film. Our Slack channel is called Film Room, where we go ahead and post stuff in. So, we're keeping it alive there in the sales game. But Workshop Wednesdays for us are kind of designed around two different things. The first thing is, what do reps feel they need to work on, and bringing those specific examples and giving breakout sessions in those groups to them to have peer-to-peer coaching moments where we have a manager or a sales leader that's actually sitting in on those so they can help like validate and coach the process. But it's really designed for them to be able to hear each other and hear how are the winners winning right now? What are some of the things for reps that might be struggling with? What are easy ways to overcome that? And just listening to your peers. Because 9 times out of 10, I love to say that my reps would listen to, every word that I say, but peer-to-peer coaching seems to be the best way to get reps to kind of move forward and kind of take that next step, because they're seeing the people that are winning every single day. So that's kind of like part one of Workshop Wednesday. And then the second part of it is, what are some things as leaders that we feel need to be worked on or need to be addressed to kind of help build the knowledge or kind of help continue to scale our sales motion? And so making sure that, okay, if we have a ton of integrations that we are working with, how do we make sure that we're slowly kind of building that knowledge into our sales process? If there's tons of partners that we work with, how do we get that in there? If we're kind of changing parts of our discovery because there is something going on in the economy. I know Gong does a lot of studies and they publish a lot of things saying, hey, we're asking, how's the economic climate for your business? How is that impacting your decision making? And being able to adjust quickly like that and having a dedicated time to go over it really helps us keep our sales motion strong and kind of ever changing versus just sitting and saying, hey, this is our process and this is what our process is going to be. It's always got to evolve based off what our customers are doing. And so we try to listen to that feedback from the customer so we can adapt what our sales motion should be.
The voice of the customer is way more important than the voice of the sales team or the marketing team. It's like, how did they say it? I love that. Okay, so also just got a note saying somehow the chat is disabled. So if you want to chat or ask a question, make sure you go to that Q&A. I actually saw one just come through here from Angela on these workshops. So Michael, Sawyer, or whoever, feel free to hop in here. For the morning workshops, what are your best practices for global or multiple time zones? How do you balance that?
Great question. So, I'll take that. I would say that again, for global and multiple time zones, I think it depends on the groups that you have involved with each of those. So if you have larger groups in each of those different time zones, then it may make sense to shorten the overall morning workshop. Instead of 30 minutes, maybe it's 15 to 20 minutes, but you're able to meet with each of those different time zones as a leader and not take up too much more of your day. In our case, we really only work mostly with 2 time zones. Both are pretty closely aligned. So we were able to find a time in the morning that worked both for both those time zones simultaneously. But I think it depends on the number of individuals and the time zones that are associated. Sawyer, anything you would add?
Yeah, we're also very fortunate where even though I'm in Pacific time, I still work Central time, and that's how most of our organization operates, is just working Central time. But I can tell you at a time, a previous organization where we were working across the Philippines and India and across like globally, having these types of dedicated meetings was a little bit different, where we would just meet with either usually your team leads or whoever your managers might be in those areas. And you as a leader, you're not going to be able to sit in on every single one. I'm not going to be on that 10 o'clock phone call at night, which is 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning for that stand-up. So I think you have to do a good job of coaching and developing your leaders who might be overseas, or if you're in that global state of business. How am I developing my people and giving them a blueprint or a sales motion or that type of foundation so they can run an effective workshop? And how do you delegate some of that stuff so then that way it's being taken care of on them? And you're there to kind of help manage that relationship and manage the questions that they're getting out of it versus trying to be in every single spot at every single time. And so that worked well for us in the past. We had close to around, I think, 2,000 employees that were either in the Philippines or in India at that point in time, but they were still responsible for cross-sell and upsell strategies. So we leaned heavily on their leadership team and kind of had them mimic some of the things we were doing, and then just manage that relationship. So it can be different depending on what your business is set up as, but that would be my recommendation.
And Sarah, I saw you come off. Were you about to add something there?
Yeah, I just honestly, and I know I'm kind of going backwards, but Sawyer mentioned something in the workshop Wednesdays that I want to make sure that we're calling out, because it's so, if you like, as magical for a frontline manager is figuring out where to leverage some really good, whether it's tools or a process. And Sawyer called this out with the peer-to-peer. If you like, louder for the people in the back on that one, if you are not utilizing the people on your team to work with each other, whether it's a workshop, we do a ton of team selling on my team. And I will tell you, part of my process when I bring somebody on is I have it to where for the first quarter, you do not take a call by yourself, period. And it's not me that's on those calls with you, because you have to be able to leverage. I want you to take bits and pieces from your peers to make your selling style. And so going back to being efficient, if you're leveraging the team selling and the peer-to-peer, you will see a greater impact and improvement on your team with the guidance of your coaching than you will see with just you doing coaching alone. So I really just wanted to call that out, because Sawyer, I think that's really brilliant.
Peer-to-peer is a high performing team, right? The way I think about it is when I was a frontline seller, I cared more about what Will, the other frontline seller who was succeeding, the advice he gave me, than I did about my boss, which I think just about everybody feels that way, right? And it's like, how do I get that peer-to-peer accountability and that collaboration, foster that? And something like a workshop Wednesday is a great idea. Will, I do want to stay here for a second, because I know sales development loves the regular check in, how to get better, stand up. I know our team here does it all the time. How do you all in sales development have that fluid motion? Maybe what's an example of something that has changed recently with the Crunchbase team?
You know what? Again, not to just be a shill for ambition again, Mark, but I'm so excited about the group check-ins that just rolled out. If y'all aren't using, I'm in love. So every Friday we recap with the team, hey, what worked, what didn't work. And so it's a way for like your individual check-ins, but as a whole group say, hey, let's figure out from your inbound workflow, what was working today, from your outbound workflow, what was working over the past week. And for collaboration, we're going to have the team break out into little breakout rooms, have everyone be in little groups together and kind of crowdsource like, hey, I kept running into this objection, or hey, this was a tactic that was really working for me to get people over the hump, and take the call for the next meeting. And then come back to the whole group and say, hey, for our group, this is what we saw and what's kind of working there. And so having the reps sort of pick each other's brains and figure out what's working, rather than me just listening in and saying like, okay, it sounds like a lot of people are running into this. This is a trend I'm seeing. Everyone try this. That's too much me talking. I'd rather have them work together in little breakout rooms and collaborate in small groups to figure out like, hey, let's try this.
Amen. One of the things I love about sales development most is how coachable, compared to, I coach enterprise account executives now, and I love them, but some of them are stubborn, right? They've had a lot of success. Like, they kind of have their thing that works. In sales development, or like an SMB AE, they just want to learn, like, pour it on me. What's working? What can I change? And I love hearing about the group check-in stuff. That's really exciting. Okay, let's move on to number 5. What a great topic. Thank you all for sharing those ideas. And this is definitely a new world challenge, proximity bias. So let me define what we mean by that. And when I say new world, I mean like post-COVID world, where you're remote, you're hybrid. It's pretty rare that everybody's in the office. And I'm a great example of having to deal with this. So I live in Nashville. On my team, I have someone living outside of Portland, Detroit, Atlanta, spread out, right? But then there are folks here in Nashville. Yesterday, I was in the office, so I saw several of them. And it's easy for those folks that are local to start to get more of a bias. Like, hey, Mark went to lunch with them. Mark had a beer with them. Mark met with them after a call. I think Sawyer yesterday called like the swivel effect of like being in the chair and being able to swivel and talk to the person next to you. And as a leader, I have to think about like, yes, I want to be with them in person. Yes, I want to pour into them, but I need to create the opportunity for the folks who are remote to also get that type of opportunity, so there isn't this proximity bias. Like, I want to continue to recruit remotely because it levels the playing field so much. I'm in an interview process right now for enterprise account executives, and I think I know where half of them live. Maybe, I guess, not even a question anymore, because I'm much more concerned on your experience and ability to win than I am where you live, right? And so with proximity bias, one of the ways that we try to approach mitigating this is through communication channels. So one of them we'll hit on earlier with Slack. We really try to automate as much recognition as we can around important milestones. And our company very much lives in Slack channels. And so by automating that where everyone can see it, or everyone on that team can see it, now if an SDR sets a meeting with Sarah at Zoom, I may be a couple levels above that SDR, but I can go in and send an emoji or a great job or whatever that looks like. And that kind of visibility is huge for driving communication, inclusion, et cetera. The other part of that is the regular coaching conversation, which we've hit on several times here. I mean, if there's one thing you take away from this, like, please have dedicated regular time with folks on your team with an agenda that they can help lead, and they feel, whether they live in Timbuktu or Nashville, that you as a leader are pouring into them and developing them on, you know, their career, their goals, et cetera. And so if I really boil it down to two, it's automate some of those wins as much as you can into a place that's very visible. Sometimes people hear automate like that's not a real celebration. No, it is, because it's putting it in a visible area where everyone can see it and celebrate. Huge. And drive a more consistent, regular coaching motion where people on your team are getting the time they deserve. So one of the, I think, Sarah, you had some ideas of kind of how Zoom is handling this regarding some office days, some remote days. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for my team, what we're doing is, you know, obviously like work styles is very important to us. You know, we talk about it over and over again, is that, you know, the world has changed and it probably won't be the same as pre-COVID. And we're all just going to grieve a little bit in one way or fashion of what that looks like. But I think it's definitely like what you said, it's meeting people where they're at. But for us, you know, we have Tuesday, Thursday office days, right? And I think that is part of it. The recommendation is that if you're going to be in the office, like, these are the days that we all want to get together and collaborate and have some community. I think if you kind of read a lot of research that's out right now, the office is not necessarily turning into a place for work as much as it is for the collaboration for the community. So as a frontline manager, building the community and reasons for people to come together for that collaboration. So the expectation is a little bit different, but my struggle now is when I'm in the office, it is the swivel effect, right? As I've got people around me, I'm up, I'm saying, hi, how are you doing? It's a lot of hugs. If you're a hugger, if you're not, it's okay. I will ask permission, but that takes me away from chat and questions. And so I have to be very thoughtful in making sure that the people that are not in the office, that I'm spending the time to say, absolutely, I can answer this question for you. Because I think in COVID, we're all so available. We're all right here and we never left our houses. And so now we have to figure out, what does our availability look like? How do we make sure the experience and people's access to us as leaders is the same? So TBD on that one. We might have to do a follow-up on how I can work through that. But I think it's going to have so many different iterations between now and, I mean, to be honest, for the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, agreed. There's going to be a lot of adapting. I think what's important is that we're making the effort to try. Sarah, a question just came in actually for you.
Sure.
Going back to the joint demos, Bruce here, I think likes the idea, but he's curious who takes the lead. And here's the real wrinkle of the question: how does comp work on those deals for you guys?
Yeah, and that's such a great question. So whoever, basically all it is it's not a requirement. I have people that work with assigned buddies per month and I change them up. And the idea is that you team sell together. I have customer A and I ask Emily to join my call because I need some backup, an additional person. And that's it. It's still my customer. Whatever happens with that customer still lives with me. The compensation piece never comes into question. It is literally because they want to learn and support each other on a team level. And then I will join one of her calls to help and support and look at it in that respect. I think the way that I'm driving the behavior is this is an opportunity for you to get better, not necessarily you're going to get better. It's good for future you. It may not pay off right now, but it's good for future you because you're actually getting better as a salesperson. So that piece doesn't really fall into the compensation. Bruce, I hope I answered that question appropriately.
Sounds to me like it's just a cultural expectation. Like this
Absolutely.
yeah, if you want to be here, this is how you ramp as quickly as possible and work together as a team. Yeah, sales is such a team game. And I am guilty years ago of like just trying to superhero, something by myself. And boy, that's such a missed opportunity. Bringing in two minds better than one. And, I know our best sellers are just great quarterbacks. Like they just bring in the right people at the right time. So thank you for that. Okay, let's go into our last question. Crew, you've been great. We are going to start asking about how do we be greater. So this is a ambition thing that we're asking a lot of folks. And we think about 2023, how do you plan to be greater next year? So Sawyer was kind enough to volunteer to go first on his plan of total world takeover in 2023. But no, share with us, Sawyer, your one thing of how you're going to be greater next year.
I did just watch The Rise of Gru, so I think I got ideas on how to get that done. But for me personally, I really want to focus 2023. We've talked a lot here about like coaching, democratizing data, like making sure that we're there for our remote employees. And all of that happens is when you kind of step in as leader and you kind of coach and validate a little bit more to what your managers are doing. You can get very easy when, as you progress through your career, whether you're a sales manager, whether you're a director, if you're a VP, how do I make sure I'm in tune with what's going on in the front line and my managers and those conversations are happening in a way that's meaningful for the reps? And so for me, a big part of what I want to do that's kind of personal and professional is just making sure I'm helping with those conversations and sitting in on more of those sessions. I think it's something I did when I first came on board at Company Cam. Like the first quarter, I was really in tune with, hey, let me sit in on some one-on-ones. Let me sit in on some sales training. Let's see how we're doing things. And then as the climate changes and as the quarter gets a little bit tougher, now you kind of drive to revenue focus and you can't let those things kind of fall by the wayside. So being more consistent in my coaching is more of a personal and professional thing of what I'm trying to build on, especially as we go into this quarter and into next year, is how do we have that solid sales motion and how is that coaching always going to be there all the way from the top down?
Beautiful. Michael, let's kick it to you next.
I love it. So I'll say two parts. I have a personal, professional. Professional side of things, I always say as leaders, we're always so busy, right? We have so many things going on in our world and our lives, and it's hard to prioritize. Many times we might even catch ourselves saying, hey, I don't have time, to do X, Y, or Z, especially around one-on-ones, things like that, or the coaching or the investment into the individual. So something that I really want to be greater on this upcoming year is asking myself the questions, a lot of times the things that we don't think we have time for are the things that are most important for our business. So evaluating what are the things that I don't think that I have time for right now and understand what is the true value add for those items and reinvest. That's my professional. Personal, I'll share, we're also foster parents on our end. We actually just recently adopted our daughter here yesterday, actually. And so be greater this upcoming year is to be the best dad we can be. So
congratulations. Holy smokes.
Thank you.
That is what a blessing. That's awesome, Michael. Thank you for sharing that.
Certainly.
Okay, Will, you're up next.
Yeah, it's funny, Mark. This is something you were just talking about. I think it's really easy for a lot of managers to try and do the superhero thing and try and do everything themselves. And it's our natural inclination, at least for me, to be like, I have to just make all these things happen for my team so they can succeed all the time. And so something I'm going to be working on professionally, but also a little bit personally, is delegating a little bit more going forward. Something I really want to do that Sarah spoke about before is really empower the reps to do that sort of peer support. There's a lot of really smart people on the SDR team here that roll up to me, and I want to have internal subject matter experts for specific things. So, hey, this is the go-to person for tooling. This is the go-to person for cold calling. This is the go-to person for personalizing emails, and have them really kind of own, not just, hey, let's talk one-on-one on how to do these things, but it's like, hey, why not run like a session training the whole team on how to do this, and have them feel empowered and think a little bit more like a leader and kind of own that share of things on the team. So it's a little bit of personal too, because it'll give me a little bit more work-life balance and a little less stress. And my wife and daughter will appreciate that.
Heard that. Thank you, Will. All right, Sarah.
Well, I wrote that down because I love that idea, and I'm gonna borrow from you. I hope that's okay. Again, going back to I have no original ideas, I just borrow from others. But I have two, obviously professional and personal. I think professionally, it's very easy. And I go back to when things aren't, we are frontline managers and leaders because at one point we were also really good sales reps, which means we like to win. And when we are not winning as much, it is very hard to stay positive and kind of stay within that optimistic mindset. And so a lot of what I'm really going to be working on for myself as well as my team is when they come to me with any sort of issues, and I've done this before and I want to really double click on it, is when they come and my response is, okay, what does great look like in this situation? I think that is really important because we get very emotional attached when things aren't going as well. And so having that piece to say, okay, what does this look like? What does great look like? What does great look like for you, for the business? And really kind of pushing back for folks to come with a solution. Also, to kind of Will's point, that makes it to where honestly, we don't have all the answers, but maybe it doesn't feel like we're putting that pressure on ourselves to have the answers. And then it gives some sort of responsibilities to the reps as well to come with solutions instead of just issues, which again is hard when things are not going the way that we expect them to be. So that's going to be a focus. And then personally, I'm embarrassed. So I'm just this is a trust tree with all of us that are on here right now. I have this stack of books right here, and then I have another stack of books behind me on this table. I keep buying leadership books and not finishing any of them. So my personal goal is I am not buying any more until I read all of these from front to back, because they're great books. I mean, I keep getting recommendations and then I just get them and put them in my stack. So again, TBD, but my hope is that I won't buy any more until I finish what I've got already.
They make you look so smart though in the background,
Trying.
even smarter is what I meant to say. Even smarter.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I want to go real quick and we're going to a question that Steven just sent in, and I'll share a professional thing. Very simple. I mentioned earlier, like customer voice. Every close one deal that we have, I want to ask the most in the know person at the customer of why they bought Ambition. I tend to know what that is, but I want to hear it in their voice. I don't want to talk about our marketing buzzwords. I want to hear what they say. And I did this recently and played it for our team, and everyone thought it was such a great thing. It was an 83-second video, so it wasn't even long. And I just think there's so much to learn from hearing how they describe it. And I think sometimes we overthink on how we can just say it best and let them say it for us. All right. We also just got a congrats on the growth of your family, Michael, that came in. So Stephen here asks, since Forrester highlighted investing in sales productivity tools, what does the panel use or want to use or think will trend in 2023? Good asterisk here. Ambition sounds great. We all know Slack, Clary, Salesforce, Zoom, Okta. What other apps have impressed you lately? And this is not an Ambition plug, so give something not named Ambition here. And do we have a volunteer to go first? Okay, sorry, go ahead.
I can go first just because we think I've been in more technical calls than I have like actual sales calls as of lately, because this is a heavy focus for Company Cam. But the two things that I have really impressed me so far is Gong. If you don't have a speech analytics software, so you can kind of give marketing, product, and sales and CX the voice of the customer and understand what's working well in terms of conversion. We're also focusing on data enrichment to make us more productive. So how can we prioritize accounts based off of the current lead funnel that we have? And so we have looking at Clearbit as an example, for making sure, how do we optimize that funnel? How do we get the right leads to the right people based off of our ICPs? And if you have a specific revenue amount or employee size, we need to handle those, number one, onboarding experience a little bit different. I think the messaging from marketing needs to be a little bit different. How we engage them in the product needs to be different. And so anything that you can do to better route your funnel to where it needs to go, and then also have the confidence that this is going to be a good fit. Those are two things that we really prioritize. But we're also looking at things that can help product engagement, which in turn helps sales. So Intercom has really impressed me lately. Something that we're looking at to kind of give that customer journey to the sales team, so they can see, hey, here's the interactions that they've had within the product. And we can tell based off the interactions that we should be scoring this lead a little bit higher, which in turn helps our conversion. So those are three tools that two of them we've implemented, one of them that we're looking at implementing, that have really impressed me personally from a sales perspective. That also helps with productivity and kind of giving time back to your leaders and to your sales team.
Thank you. Excellent. Who else? Well, go ahead.
Definitely want to double down on Gong. Something that we use it for that I don't think gets recognized enough is as an onboarding tool. It was really critical for an SDR leader to have reps come in and quickly understand how to pitch and sell the product. So Gong is integral in having them just hear other people talk about selling the product. But on top of that, and again, because onboarding is always on my mind, we're big fans of a tool called Reggie.ai. They just raised their Series A recently. It's about AI leverage personalized emails to help generate for leaders. So for SDR leaders, you're not constantly racking your brain on how do we break into this new market. They can help you with that, but they also have a Chrome extension where reps can get support, better personalizing and leveraging more inclusive language, more succinct language, kind of similar to like a Grammarly, but more sales focused. Definitely something I want to promote there. And then just because Sawyer mentioned Intercom, we're big Drift users here at Crunchbase, and Drift has a great feature where people can be curious about something and just immediately book time on someone's calendar, or they can chat about it, and they can just have that speed to lead, and we can quickly qualify them and get them connected to an account executive if they need to.
These are all excellent. Okay, we've only got a few minutes left, so we have run through a ton for the audience. So to the panelists, thank you all for doing this. What I'm most proud of is there was a lot of really tactical stuff shared. And this, of course, is recorded. It's going to be sent out within the next 24 hours. So if you joined, it's coming. If for the people who didn't make it, it's coming too. This is my email address here. Ambition is running a free trial of our coaching orchestration product. That for the people who came or registered, we wanted to offer this to you all. For those who might be interested, you've heard a little bit about it today. Email me personally rather than send you to the site. This is my email address. So, or just prospect me about your tool and how it could help Ambition. But either way, we want to offer this up to the crew. So let me know if you're interested. I will get you taken care of. But lastly, just thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of the Ambition family. We look forward to doing more of these and seeing you again soon. Everybody have a great Thursday. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.